Ignore the stereotype. Create success. The story of Leila Nguyen. I'm Leila Nguyen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who know you the least. My family has always been proud of traditional values, education, fame, and recognition from others. My father, a professor emeritus at Stanford, was a symbol of wisdom and success in the classical way. My mother was a strong woman, always making sure that every member of the family met the perfect standard that she expected. And my brother, Victor Nguyen, is the brightest star of the family. Victor is like a carefully honed diamond. Perfect SAT scores, a full scholarship to Harvard, and then a straight path to an MBA program at one of the world's top business schools. What about me? I was a weird kid. When Victor memorized every page of the textbook, I liked to disassemble the computer to learn how it worked. When he spent hours preparing his college essay, I sat in the garage again, experimenting with lines of code. "Lila, you're wasting your potential." My mother would shake her head when she saw me tinkering with the circuit boards. "Look at Victor. He's preparing for an MBA, and I only know how to tinker." I know I'm different. But instead of feeling proud of my uniqueness, I just felt lonely. The day Victor received his acceptance letter to Harvard Business School was a big day in the house. My mother prepared a fancy dinner, my father raised a toast, and the whole family kept talking about his brilliant future. Meanwhile, I sat in the corner of the table, silent. I applied to a community college near my home, not because I wanted to study, but because I didn't want to disappoint my parents anymore. But trying to please them didn't last long. After only one semester, I decided to drop out of school. When announcing my decision, my parents reacted as if I had just committed a terrible crime. "Lila, do you know what you're doing? You're ruining your future," my father shouted, his eyes full of disappointment. My mother cried for days, reproaching me for embarrassing my family. Victor came home for spring break, wearing his signature Harvard shirt. When he heard the news, he didn't bother to hide his sarcastic smile. "Don't worry, sister. When you manage a Fortune 500 company, you're going to give me a leg in the mailroom," he scoffed. That night, I sat alone in the garage. All around me were piles of circuit boards and unfinished equipment prototypes. The air in the house was cold, but there was a strong determination in me. I would succeed, but not by following the path they wanted. I'm going to do it my way. The first years of that journey were really a big challenge. I used my little savings to buy computer components, eat instant noodles to save money, and work non-stop in my small garage. While Victor posts photos from networking parties at Harvard, I stay up all night coding and experimenting with ideas. I realize that small businesses are being left behind in the cybersecurity market, where most solutions are too complex and expensive. From that idea, I set out to develop a simple yet effective product that small businesses could easily access. I named it Shield Tech. The first version is rudimentary, but it works. Gradually, my first clients appeared. From a small business, I got a second, 10th, and then 100th customer. By my third year, I had signed my first $1 million contract. But no matter what I achieve, my family still doesn't recognize it. "Lila has a cute little business," my mom told friends. But then she'll realize that she needs to learn more to do something bigger. And Victor, he is still the bright star. At every family party, I was always compared to him. Victor has just signed a $15 million contract. Victor was just interviewed by Business Weekly. And if someone mentions my success, it always comes with a scorn. Lila's company is doing pretty well, considering she doesn't have a degree. But I don't let those comments deter me. I knew that in order to prove myself, I didn't have to please my family. I just had to keep building my dream. After I decided to drop out of school, I started from scratch in my small garage. No money, no support from my family, only a strong passion for technology and a determination to prove that I am not a failure as they think. The early years were really harsh. I live on instant noodles, drink coffee to stay awake, work all night, and sleep on an old futon in the corner of my office. The garage was cramped, there was no air conditioning, but that's where all my ideas started to take shape. While Victor posts photos from luxury networking parties at Harvard, I spend hours researching the market. I've realized that small businesses, coffee shops, grocery stores, or family businesses are being neglected in cybersecurity. The solutions available in the market are too complex and expensive, making them easy targets for cyber attacks. I started building Shield Tech, a simple yet powerful security software that helps small businesses protect themselves without having to understand the technology deeply. The first version of Shield Tech was rudimentary, but it worked. My first clients came from cold calls and small meetings. A small business trusts me, then adds a second or third business. Rumors spread quickly. Shield Tech is not only easy to use, but also effective. In just 3 years, I signed my first $1 million contract. Shield Tech is no longer a small project in a garage, but has become a real company, Everythin Tech, with its own office and a dedicated staff. But despite the great achievements, my family still does not recognize them. Lila's company is pretty good, considering she doesn't have a degree, my mother said with a hint of scorn at family parties. And Victor? He continued to advance in his career, worked at a reputable consulting firm, and constantly bragged about big contracts. To him, I am still just a self-tinkering sister, not a real businessman. Although I was looked down on by my family, I never stopped working and growing the company. Everythin Tech is expanding, becoming one of the leaders in cybersecurity for small businesses. But what I didn't expect was that the biggest confrontation of my life came from my brother, Victor. At a party celebrating Victor's promotion to CEO of the technology division, he made public his intention to buy my company, stating that I was not qualified to manage. It was a splendid evening at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, where my family celebrated Victor's appointment as CEO of the technology department at the prestigious consulting firm. The guests in attendance were all powerful figures in Silicon Valley, including some of my clients and rivals, something my parents didn't notice at all. I arrived early, wearing a simple black dress. Mom immediately complained, "Lila, can't you try to look better? This is my brother's important evening." I just smiled, didn't answer. The party went on as usual, filled with praise for Victor. Speeches praising him for his talent, intellect, and outstanding achievements made the whole auditorium applaud. Then came the moment that Victor stepped onto the podium, toasted, and declared, "I'm excited to announce that we're expanding dramatically into the small business cybersecurity market. And to do that, we're going to start by acquiring my sister's company, Everythin Tech." The auditorium was silent for a moment before whispers rang out everywhere. Victor continued, a smug smile on his face. "Everythin Tech has done well, but in today's market, qualified leaders are needed. Lila did her best, but it was time for the experts to take over." I sat there, motionless. His gaze seemed to challenge me to react, waiting for me to accept this offer as a succumb to the reality he had long believed in, that I was incapable. But I didn't give him that satisfaction. I stood up and walked to the podium. "Thank you for your offer, Victor. I'll have an answer tomorrow morning." The confrontation with Victor. It was a splendid evening at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, where my family celebrated Victor's appointment as CEO of the technology department at the prestigious consulting firm. The guests in attendance were all powerful figures in Silicon Valley, including some of my clients and rivals, something my parents didn't notice at all. I arrived early, wearing a simple black dress. Mom immediately complained, "Lila, can't you try to look better? This is my brother's important evening." I just smiled, didn't answer. The party went on as usual, filled with praise for Victor. Speeches praising him for his talent, intellect, and outstanding achievements made the whole auditorium applaud. Then came the moment that Victor stepped onto the podium, toasted, and declared, "I'm excited to announce that we're expanding dramatically into the small business cybersecurity market. And to do that, we're going to start by acquiring my sister's company, Everythin Tech." The auditorium was silent for a moment before whispers rang out everywhere. Victor continued, a smug smile on his face. "Everythin Tech has done well, but in today's market, qualified leaders are needed. Lila did her best, but it was time for the experts to take over." I sat there, motionless. His gaze seemed to challenge me to react, waiting for me to accept this offer as a succumb to the reality he had long believed in, that I was incapable. But I didn't give him that satisfaction. I stood up and walked to the podium. "Thank you for your offer, Victor. I'll have an answer tomorrow morning." The next morning, at Everythin Tech's office, Victor and my dad walked in with his 2 lawyers. They bring confident eyes and prepared documents for the transfer of the company. But I'm also ready. As they sat down, Victor smiled. I think you'll find this a very generous deal. I opened my laptop and connected it to the big screen in the meeting room. Before we discuss, I have some documents to share, I said with a smile on my face. I begin to present. Nguyen Tech's valuation, $100 million, confirmed by 3 independent valuation firms. Our client list, including Victor's company, which has depended on my security system for years. Victor turned pale when he realized that he was sitting across from him not as a weak sister, but as the CEO of a company he and other competitors needed to respect. Finally, I made a decisive counterattack. Nguyen Tech acquired the entire technology department of your company last night. This is a legal document that has been approved by the board. Victor stiffened. My father was silent, while their lawyers quickly double-checked the paperwork. Victor, you have 2 options, I said. Resign with a generous compensation package, or face a public scandal when I reveal how you've relied on my technology all along. 20 minutes after the meeting, I stood from my office window and looked down. Victor walked out of the building, his face dark. He left in silence. Only my father was left trying to comfort him, but obviously he couldn't hide his confusion. I didn't feel gloatingly happy. That's not my purpose. But this was the moment I realized I had stepped out of my brother's shadow and my family's harsh judgment. That day, a press release about Nguyen Tech's acquisition of the technology division of the consulting firm where Victor worked was announced. The news quickly spread in the tech world. A company founded by a woman without a degree has surpassed the industry giants, the headlines of the articles read. Victor resigned shortly afterwards, moving to work in the real estate industry, where he was able to get away from the tech sector he had once considered his domain. My father decided to retire, perhaps because he also realized that the rigid standards of education and success he imposed on me were no longer relevant to this era. A year after things calmed down, Nguyen Tech was officially publicly listed on the stock market. The company's value tripled, making it one of the fastest-growing cybersecurity companies of the decade. This success is not only a milestone in terms of finances, but also an affirmation to the world that a girl who was once looked down on can far exceed the narrowest expectations. Even though my work is busy, I still take time to reflect on the path I have taken. The journey from a small garage through years of ridicule to building a tech empire is not only a story of success, but also a journey of self-discovery and self-acceptance. My family, even though they realized their mistake, still did not easily heal me. We met during the holidays, but there was always an invisible distance between us. My mother would sometimes say, "You know, we just want the best for you." But I no longer need explanations or apologies. Victor, after a major fall from the CEO position, now works in real estate, an industry that is completely away from technology. He texted from time to time, trying to start normal conversations, but there was no intimacy between us. The only thing I wish was for him to realize the lesson. Success doesn't just come down to degrees or titles, but to creativity, hard work, and courage. One day, I received an invitation from Harvard Business School, where Victor had graduated. They wanted me to be a speaker at the graduation ceremony with the theme, Innovation Without Limits, Success Beyond Traditional Ways. Standing on the podium in front of hundreds of new graduates, I told my story. I talked about the long nights in the garage, the times I was looked down upon, and how I overcame it all to build my own company. I emphasize, sometimes success is not in the predetermined paths. Sometimes you have to be brave enough to write your own rules. The lecture received a long round of applause, and as I stepped off the stage, I realized I had nothing left to prove to anyone. Success is not about revenge or about proving others wrong. Success for me is finding peace in the path I have chosen. Today I continue to run Nguyen Tech, not only with the goal of profit, but also with the desire to change the way the world views innovation. I've learned that the greatest successes often come from the smallest dreams, from a small garage, from perseverance, and from believing in yourself when no one else is doing it. And finally, every time someone reminds me, that's Lila Nguyen, the girl who dropped out of school, I smile. The story does not stop at the girl who dropped out of school, but continues with a strong affirmation, and the one who changed the whole game.